Engineer President, Engineer Kwabna Bimpong, President of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, Vice President Leslie Alex Aye, esteemed stakeholders in the steel reinforcement industry, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I am truly delighted to welcome each one of you to this significant gathering, a stakeholder dialogue convened by the Ghana Institution of Engineering and Fabri Metal. It is my privilege to facilitate this important conversation. Today, we find ourselves in a setting where the steel reinforcement industry is poised for transformation, where challenges and opportunities coexist, and where the collective wisdom and collaboration of all stakeholders can lead us towards a more future. It's comprehensive, touching upon several critical aspects of the steel reinforcement industry. We will delve into the regulatory framework that governs the steel reinforcement industry in our nation. This involves not only ensuring safety and quality standards, but also fostering an environment we will discuss the current state of steel reinforcement manufacturing in Ghana, identifying strengths and areas for improvement to bolster domestic production and reduce dependency on imports. Understanding the dynamics of importation, sales, and distribution is paramount. With production, exploring avenues to enhance the efficiency of supply chains and distribution networks. No industry is without its challenges, but it is our response to these challenges that define our progress. Together, we will identify and analyze the obstacles that hinder opportunities that lie within these challenges. As we engage in these discussions, it is important to keep in mind that the steel reinforcement industry is an integral component of our nation's development. It impacts our infrastructure, construction projects, consequences, not only for the industry players, but also the entire Ghanaian society. In the spirit of collaboration and inclusivity, I encourage each one of you to share your insights, experiences, and ideas freely. Let us engage in constructive dialogue, open to diverse perspectives and innovative solutions. Positive change in the industry. At the end of this dialogue, it is my hope that we will emerge with a clearer understanding of the path forward. I anticipate that we will have identified actionable recommendations that can be translated into policies, initiatives, and strategies to elevate welcome to you all. Thank you for being a part of this conversation that holds the potential to shape the future of the sea reinforcement industry in Ghana. Let us embark on this dialogue, discovery, and collaboration journey with enthusiasm and dedication. Thank you. Again, thank you very much, Nyante. This program is a collaborative effort with Fabric Meta. So we want to play a sponsored video, then they'll come and tell us who they are for us to know them. Okay, so are you ready? All right, so.
Battery Metal Ghana's story begins in 2015 when a steel giant collaboration took place, pioneering the open manufacturing of high tensile fat 500T rebars, a thriving industry in Ghana. Since then, Battery Metal Ghana has grown to become a leading manufacturer and supplier of the Ghanaian construction comprises a diversified range of infrastructural units to drive it since inception. Our production facility, located in Chopoli, covers over 150 acres with an annual production of 150,000 tons. Welcome to Battery Metal. Our range of products include FAB 500 TNT rebars and merchant bars manufactured according to the highest
having facility of SMS, that is steel making shop and steel rolling mill. Producing the TFT bar as per the standard of ES 449, which is an international standard. Also, we have a certificate of Bureau Veritas, also certificate of J, following the ISO and OSA standard. And fighting for money for every penny of our products to buy. Come with me as I watch
Quality and safety are of supreme importance every step of the way. Our state-of-the-art production facility covers from furnace to building with high and software that we use to execute and monitor the process. Our using fully computerized tamper-proof testing machines with capabilities 1,000.
All right, thank you very much, Fabric Meta.
Thank you very much. Welcome you all. We share this opportunity to give you our insights on the industry. Just to let you know that the Ghana Institution of Engineering has been a key collaborator with us. We believe that the strength of the industry depends on a lot of stakeholders, not only on the fabricators and the manufacturers of steel. It depends from the people that define which steel should be used, architects, engineers, from the estimates of the government. There's to then defend the work and they're needed in Ghana to support the future of the nation. So thank you very much one more time, the president and the executive director of this great association. And thank you very much, Mr. Joseph, Engineer Joseph, for welcoming us. And I hope we have an insight and good discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Is to have the slide. Okay, so this is going to be done by myself and the executive director. Executive director, please start. We're going to talk about contemporary issues on rebars in the construction industry. So you start, then I'll continue. David.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's give you snapshots of what the issues are in the value chain of rebar industry in this country. And then during the panel discussion, we can contribute and help us generate some recommendations and action plans that will help us improve the industry. So the objectives of this dialogue, as I said, is to inform and educate ourselves, fostering collaboration, and how to influence policy and decision making in this industry. So we'll be going through these slides. I think there's a few of them. There are not too many. One slide for each issue, except the background, I might have 2 slides. And then at the end of the panel discussion, general discussion amongst participants. Right, so we all know that the construction industry is growing. A lot of infrastructure projects, housing, demand, so on. And this implies increased demand for rebars. So there's for manufacturing, for importation of rebars, if we can manufacture enough to satisfy ourselves here, then it will definitely come up economic and employment opportunities. And within every industry, you have labor challenges of unskilled labor, sufficient skilled labor will have to meet that challenge. And challenges of quality also of every production. Consumption is about 120,000 tons per year. Okay, that's the kind of consumption that are being averaged. And we import about 50% of the reinforcement need. And the revenue from this industry, about $800 billion US. Estimated. These are the operators. The key players you can see, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and so on, to the end user. The raw materials feeding into manufacturing, manufacturing feeding into distributors, retailers, individual homes, and industrial consumers, and then regulation all the way through. So the sources of our reinforcement in this country, mainly or I mean, we don't have the capacity to produce all that we need. So we have at least six manufacturers in this country, at least. And they cater for about 55% of the reinforcement we need, which means that we need to bring the rest from somewhere. And that's mainly from China, India, Turkey, Ukraine. I don't know if it's still coming from Ukraine, but we used to get some steel from Ukraine. And the regulators in the industry, Standards Board definitely will be there to make sure that we meet the right standards of production and that the right standards of steel also come into the country. In factories, inspectorate division for the process, the safety of the factories, etc. They are also there. And Engineering Council of Ghana, I think this is quite new to most of us, but they also come in there in terms of registration of manufacturing firms. This is under the Act 819/2011. Right, so we want to talk about the challenges faced in manufacturing or by the manufacturers. Some of these include limited capacity compared to demand. They don't have the necessary capacity to meet our needs. As you know, we import quite a bit of reinforcement. High production costs from energy, raw materials. They import some of their raw materials. And then affordability issues in terms of paying for some of these items. And the wide variety of products required in this country: mild steel, high-end steel, 6mm, 12, so, all the way to, I think they end around 16, 20, unless you need a special order, then probably, I don't know whether they have enough capacity to do the big orders. They do, okay. So then they're going for that, but there's a high variety of, a wide variety of products that they have to contend with. So you can imagine what does to production. Then raw materials. The source of raw materials for them, they import some of them. Some are obtained from scrap materials. And some time ago, there was a ban on scrap materials. I don't know if it's still in place, but the ban for exporting of scrap materials. So I don't know if that is still in place or not. Then we have market perception. How do we feel about the steel we produce? We think that everything coming from outside is better than what is produced here. That is a challenge for them, getting rid of that negative perception. And then the negative impact of imported rebars. How do they compete with those importing the reinforcement? You know that exchange rates volatility alone can affect them compared to those bringing it from outside, etc., etc. Economic and financial challenges, access to finance, currency fluctuations. These are all issues that we have to contend with. And I'm sure these issues I'm bringing up are not new to you. You are aware of all these issues, but I'm just drawing attention to these issues so that when the discussions start, you can help us to generate some recommendations and action plans that can help us identify solutions for some of these problems. So I'm just priming you, getting you ready for the discussion. And then when we start the discussion, hopefully you give us quite a bit to chew on. Sales and distribution, poor storage conditions. We see some of our rebars out in the open, rusting and that kind of thing. The same thing, negative impact of imported rebars, facing competition from imported rebars, those who sell the local products. Price concerns, cost and affordability. and stable prices for us, changing with the volatility and fluctuation rates. Holiday products, do we have the right transportation and the right handling equipment to transport our rebars safely? Access to finance, difficulties in tracking products. Are you able to determine the source of the products when you go to the market? Are you able to track it back to the production site? Then for the users, I think most of us here are users. We try to get everyone from the value chain, but I think most of us here will be users. Non-conforming products, size, weight, for the designers, the consultants. Are you able to design comfortably knowing that you will get the right size of bars in the market? For the contractors, are you able to go out there and be sure that you are getting the right size of bars that are specified in the drawings? Cost and affordability. Are you able to buy them? Can you plan to buy them? How often does the price change? Training and skills development for professional artisans. Do we have enough of them who are well trained and able to do our projects for us? Can we have enough of them when we are doing large projects for those consultants who get involved in very large projects? Next one, I think Joseph should be taking over at this point. Talk about opportunities for regulators, and then okay. So for the regulators, these are some of the things that we think can be opportunities for you. There's the opportunity of employing more people. Why? Because we need to monitor the whole supply chain, right down from the source and so on. So we think that there are opportunities for employing people to do monitoring and employing people to do testing of these materials for you. And we think that through this, you should be able to have a sustainable way of monitoring manufacturing and marketing. There should be a way of, you should be able to develop or think out a way where we can do this monitoring sustainably so that we don't have to grapple with issues of resources and things like that. The opportunity to try and reduce the wide variety of products. For instance, we stick to high yield steel. Why do we have mild steel and high yield when it doesn't cost more to produce high yield steel than mild steel? Why? And it's creating problems for us in monitoring and so on and so forth. Trackability of products on the market. Is it easy to trace to the factories or the manufacturing places? Are you able to determine the source of those products on the market such that if there's any issue with them, you can go back to the factory and get it resolved? Certified laboratories. If you are giving employment to laboratories, I'm sure that there will be more certified laboratories out there, and there will be more employment for people as well. And if we're able to do the monitoring properly, and we are able to sanction defaulting manufacturers or distributors or salespeople, then there's the opportunity to correct the system. If we cannot sanction and penalize people for doing the wrong things, then they will continue to do the wrong things. Collaboration of industry. Is it possible that there can be an advisory board comprising stakeholders like we gathered here, cutting across the whole value chain to deliberate upon issues in the value chain and help provide solutions for these issues? For the manufacturers, I think that these could be success factors for them. Can we influence government policy in a way that helps them to get local content, raw materials, and things like that in their production. You know that Ghana now produces iron. You don't always have to go and import those materials. Tariffs and tax incentives. I think GIPC has some. Can we constantly review these taxes and tariffs and see how they affect the industry within the changing environment, economic environment, and stuff like that? Research, development, and development grants. Are we able to partner with academia, research into ways of doing what we do better and being innovative? And then the bankers, how do we get access to affordable finance so that we can fight the competition out there? And obviously, there's potential for growth. If we are producing only 55% of the steel we need in this country, then there's a huge potential for growth and huge potential for employment as well. For users, I think that we should find opportunities in educating and creating awareness, the pros and cons of using local reinforcement versus imported rebars reinforcement. Not that we can get all from within, but the perception about our local production, we should try and get it right. And then quality assurance issues. Well-informed users. Skills training for craftsmen, masons, steel benders. How do they develop their skills concerning these rebars? Do we even have enough of them who understand how to work on this reinforcement properly? So recommendations, I'm hoping that at the end of this discussion, we'll be able to put up a number of recommendations which we can action, which can help us, work and improve the industry. We won't solve all the problems now, but if we continue to work at it, if we continue to do the dialogue, we should be able to start improving the industry. One recommendation that we are looking at, or we can take forward, is creating an advisory committee to brainstorm on the industry. This should cut across the whole value chain, and then from time to time, see how we can influence policy. So I'm relying on you to help us generate these recommendations. As I told you, we'll go into the panel discussions, and then we expect that you share your experience with us and then your insights into the industry. And then we'll continue to move our recommendations into action plans and see how these action plans will affect the industry. As we speak now, the GHI, we are working on reviewing the quality standard. So we are working on getting Ghana Standards Board to activate the process for reviewing the standards. And we are also doing some training of craftsmen nationwide to upskill their knowledge in the use of rebars. And we hope that these awareness creation and these training programs will help start the improvement in the industry. It's a continuous process. We can't do all at once, but we need to start. We need to start moving in the right direction. We need to start getting the industry focused in the way that things will improve. Otherwise, we'll have ourselves to blame. No one will do it for us. We have to do it ourselves. We are the stakeholders in the industry. And if we don't do it, who else will do it for us? So with that, I will call on Joseph. And let's start the discussion. And let's get the ideas coming.
Thank you, Maidi. He's come and job for me. Please give it to him again. Thank you very much, Idi. So our next item is to have a panel discussion. But before we do that, some 5 minutes health break we do. Just stretch ourselves whilst we get a few things sorted out, please. So just interact, okay? At least get to know of names of 2 persons. I'll ask you. I'll ask you. Just to know the name of 2 persons. Hello. Hello, shall we please get back to our seats? On our benches. All right, thank you very much. And you're welcome back to this section. This section will be more of panel discussion. We'll bring up here some of our friends, some various, they are, okay, I call them our stakeholders. And they'll come and share their views on some of the issues. When they are done, we'll come back to the plenary, and then you also give us some thought as well. But let me, at this juncture, welcome our friends from Ghana Standards Authority. They said I didn't mention the strong protest. Where are they? Yeah, Standards Authority. All right, so we have 5 panelists, okay, from the various stakeholders spectrum. Shall we have Engineer Adelaide Akins from DSA here? Let's welcome her. So pick your seat randomly, yes. Mr. Edward Bajiri, please, what's the rank? I want to mention your rank. Chief Revenue Officer, Edward Bajiri. Let's have him here, please. Random, can pick the random. Thank you very much. And then Eric James, Fabri Meta, a random seat. We have Daniel Soa from Ministry of Trade and Industry. Okay, he's also here. And then the Civil Division gave us Michael Jackson, right? Michael Jackson. All right, thank you very much for coming. We want to look at a few issues or some issues which are mainly around the presentation that Engineer Devinyante gave us. So our panel here or panelists will give us some expansion. All right, so once I decide to ask you to pick your seat randomly, I also have the chance to ask random questions and pick the first random person to answer the question. So I'll come to you, Eric. All right, but before we go on, you have some mics there. I will ask you to just in a minute introduce yourself officially to us. Let's know you the more and what you do at your respective places. So we can start with Mr. Chief Revenue Officer Edward Bajiri. Can you keep, okay, thank you very much. Is the microphone on?
Yeah, thank you. It looks like you have identified me already, but pardon me, I am recovering from a sore throat, so my voice may not get across nicely. But my name is Edward Bajiri, Chief Revenue Officer. I am with the Import and Export Unit at the headquarters.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Soa with the Ministry of Trade and Industry. I'm the Standards Department of Industry.
Let's give it some.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Jackson with the Ghana Airports Company Limited as a civil engineer.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Jene. I'm the Regional Managing Director for the group. In Ghana, we have 3 companies, aside of Fabri Metal. We also have Roofings and Steel, that does tubes and roofing materials, and a paint company called Rainbow.
Can you please give the microphone? Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adelaide Akins. I work with Ghana Standards Authority with the testing division. I am the officer responsible for testing silver.
Thank you. So quickly, I come back to you, Eric. Can you tell us or give us a perspective about the key challenges in sourcing raw materials for steel bar production, and how can sustainability consideration be integrated in the process?
Sure. So let me give you an update a bit on the industry right now in Ghana. So we estimate the market in Ghana to be about 600,000 tons of material per year in terms of rebars. And we estimate actually the current production capacity in Ghana among the different firms to be about 1.2 million, which means actually Ghana can produce twice as much as the steel being consumed by the country at the moment. So the majority of the raw material that we use in Ghana is actually either scrap metal that we melt. So in essence, while it's true that the process of converting scrap to steel also does pollute, we're actually 100% recyclable company. So 100% of what we produce actually in our firm in Ghana is recycled scrap material. It's collected from old bikes, wheelbarrows, metal that's being left abandoned. And we use that. We have a supply of trucks that come every day to the factory, as well as to our colleague companies in the industry. And we melt all that scrap to produce new material. There is times where there's an importation possibly of billets, and a billet is a middle part of the production in the value chain, where we bring big blocks of steel to be heated and produced into rebars, but that's not very often. One thing that we have to say is that Ghana does not produce enough scrap for the current capacity or current consumption of the country, which means scrap is being imported sometimes from Burkina, Mali, Togo, and other places. And that means that in the future, ongoing, there will be continuous supply, importation of billets or scrap to the country to be able to fulfill our needs. There is a process in Ghana currently of promoting the iron ore, iron oxide in mining. The reality is that there are some blocks assigned, but it's still quite far from the reality of us being able to use it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's him. As a quick follow-up, Ministry of Trade, what can you do, or are you doing to help this industry grow, especially in with access to raw materials? You know, there's this kind of competition where scrappers have the potential to export these raw materials. Is the ministry doing something about it?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think I heard or I saw exploitation of scrap metals.
Yeah.
But there is ferrous scrap and then there's non-ferrous scrap. So usually is the ferrous scrap that is needed by the industry. The non-ferrous scrap is exported. So there's a regulation that guides the exportation of non-ferrous metals. But like you have said, the ministry wants the industry to grow. So there was a ban on the exportation of ferrous scrap so that the local industry can use it. So I think the ban is still in force. And so as I think I've called Mr. Egeni on this before. I've not seen him before, but if I've called him on the exportation of ferrous scrap before, and yeah, he explained to me. And so there's a ban. There's a ban on exportation of ferrous scrap, but for non-ferrous scrap, just like gold, it's exported. I mean, just like how gold is exported, people also need it elsewhere, so it's exported.
Thank you very much. I think it's very clear now. Ghana Standards Authority. So can you briefly tell us the role quality standards play in ensuring the safety and reliability of steel bars in the construction industry?
Okay, thank you. So standards are established to ensure that products, and in this case, steel bars, meet specifications, minimum specifications set out by the standard. And also standards are formulated to make sure that the specifications in those standards, there are test methods that we can test those test parameters by. So in Ghana, the current standard for steel bars is GS 788, which is not different from anything practiced elsewhere. It's basically adopted from ISO, and it makes sure that steel bars are fit for purpose. In this case, it requires that steel bars have a certain appearance. This is a specification in the standard. It also requires that we have variety of diameters. And this variety of diameters are supposed to have a certain mass per length or dimensional requirement. And these are all in the standard. The standard also requires that steel bar should have certain grades of tensile strength. So it has variety of tensile strength that steel bars can meet, so many grades. And then there are so many chemical composition varieties that a steel bar can meet. So every grade has a certain chemical composition that's supposed to meet. Every steel bar in the standard, every steel bar is also supposed to be marked with the grade of the steel, the manufacturer of the steel, and then the nominal diameter of the steel. These are the requirements of the standard GS 788. And in the standard GS 782 tells you, or it gives you a test method by which tensile strength test should be performed, so that if tensile strength test is performed in lab A, it shouldn't be different. The result should not be different from it being performed in lab B. So this is what GS 788 is about. So we have a current standard that makes sure that steel bars that are produced in Ghana meet minimum standard quality requirements.
Okay, thank you very much, Ali. So I'll go to Chief Revenue Officer, right? Am I correct? You don't want us to know that you have more money. So, Edward, we now want to think about importation of steel bars, because it's also creating a kind of competition with the locally manufactured products. What do you look out for when these bars come in? Do you have any regime or framework that an importer who is bringing in steel bar go through? Thank you very much. Steel bars are just like any other product that we have coming into the country. And so if you are an importer, we expect that you have to go through the normal regime. You have to get your import document, your IDF, and all those things. And when it comes in, we expect that you should go to the lab standard authority and make sure that the product you are bringing meets the standards that we expect them to meet. And the clearing process is spelled out. You need to pass a declaration, and it has to be approved. The evaluation has to be done, classification, and all those things. And we all agree on the value and the specifications and whatever documentary requirements that you need to fulfill. You pay your duty and it goes through the system. We don't really have a special procedure for clearing or for the importation of iron rods. It's just like any other product. Yeah, but still with you, you mentioned about going through standards of and then tested. Do you see that confirmation before you go on with your process of getting it cleared or something? Yes, this is how the process goes. The first step is self-assessment and self-declaration. But then before you are able to clear your goods from customs, the standard authorities will have to come in and ensure that whatever product they are bringing is the standard. If they don't meet the standard, then it means that you either have to send the goods to where you brought them from, or we will seize it and maybe refer it to the appropriate authority for action to be taken. And just to add, we also have a lab that collaborates with the standard authority. And so they also take samples and analyze some of those things. And so that is what happens. Okay. Thank you very much. Forgive me, my voice is still, that's fine. Michael, I see you to be a very young, dynamic engineer. So what, in your opinion, what initiative can be taken to attract young professionals in careers in engineering, construction related steel bar, steel rebars or steel bar products?
All right. So first of all, I think the industry has already identified a need, and once there's a need, or if you need something, then you have to either go for it if it's available and within your means, or you create it if it's not there, or you have the means to create it. If I say so, I mean, how do you then get the people that we need to fill the gap that has been identified? The industry, it's through the education system. So, for instance, at the tertiary levels, those who are within the engineering fields can be pushed by these industry players or those who need them before they even graduate and come out. And when they come out, then they get mentors to help them appreciate and also love the industry. That by so doing, at least we can get to meet or push the gap that has been identified over there. Then to create people for the industry at the secondary level, we want to inculcate in them the appreciation to love the construction industry. So, for instance, when they get to the secondary level, that's when you reach out to them to take courses in engineering. So from secondary level to the tertiary level, you started inculcating in them the need to come into the industry, because if you don't create it, then it means the gap will still be there. And when the gap is still there, I mean, it's still the industry people who would have to fill it or fill the gap. How then do we create them? For instance, industry players can take upon themselves. We know the statistics, we know the people within the industry. When they are going out or when they are retiring from the industry, and we know the number we need to fill up. So for instance, maybe Fabric Metal can say, I'll take upon myself to create or bring out maybe 100 engineering students to fill the gap I need. Another industry player can take maybe another quantity. Then by so doing, it becomes a number that will fill the gap that is needed for the years to come. So it makes it easy for the industry not to lack skilled people, but rather fill the gap as it goes ahead.
But have you experienced the use of steel bar before in the construction industry?
Yes, yes.
What one or two challenges or that you have as an engineer?
Yes. So one of the challenges is the methods we use to bend, if I can talk about the steel benders. But the method looks too archaic and very, very dangerous. They have their benches with the reinforcements in between two bars fixed and using their manpower to bend. In fact, the strenuous exercise. So that is a challenge for me that I've identified, which I believe industry people can help them. These days, there are a lot of technology can help with steel bending. That can also help these young engineers coming up to take out the rules in industry. Because, for instance, if someone comes to your site and sees you sitting behind the computer, putting the shapes and dimensions of rebars, and once it's done, it comes out, the shape is already cut. It makes it easy and they appreciate it more than seeing someone bending 10 tons or maybe 16 mm high tensile, sweating all day, and it becomes a challenge for someone to appreciate our industry. So for me, I believe once Fabric Metal is there, I saw the steel bending machines in their factory. Those they sell to, for instance, the Atala scale for example, they can also help them to appreciate the need to get these machines at their various shops, so that the steel benders over there can use them to make the work easy, also for them and also to move work.
Right. So it's handling issues here. All right, I'll come back to you. Let me come to you. How can the steel rebar industry contribute to circular economy?
So the first and the most important thing is that for Ghana to grow, and the most important thing, we need to create jobs. For engineers to have jobs to build houses, we need people that can afford to buy houses. Yes, it's true that we have a lack of affordable housing in Ghana, but how many jobs are we creating that we're paying the salaries that people can afford the houses? And that's only going to happen when Ghana grows strong in agriculture and manufacturing. And we're not here to argue for banning of importation of foreign materials, but the reality is that The transformation of Ghana has to do by creating a very strong manufacturing and agricultural force. The people are earning their salaries, they're paying their taxes, they pay those needs. And that's what's actually eventually going to make Ghana independent and the possibility to grow on its own. So starting from there, the local industry is generating jobs. Unfortunately, we all live in a very global world. And maybe I don't want to expand too much because Engineer David showed any one of those points in the presentation could be a two-day forum here on its own. But the reality is that what Ghana needs to grow in manufacturing and what the industry can do is create skill sets. And for that, unfortunately, in the current global world, West Africa or Africa missed that development that Southeast Asia or Latin America had 50 years ago. And we got hit by this global trade, where it's cheaper to bring a container from Southeast Asia than manufacture anything in Ghana. And one of the reasons why it's cheaper is because the productivity that we have in Ghana is lower than those in other places, although it could be the same or better. So what's happening and what we see a tendency, so going back to the presentation, we operate in 9 different countries in Africa. So actually, we are the largest steel manufacturer in West Africa. And what we're seeing a tendency is that many of the Central African countries, they are creating protectionism for local manufacturing. And this is so the skill set in Ghana can grow. If we have better protection for the local manufacturers, we can actually change a lot of the experts that we have, and we have time to create the local skill set. If we do that, then we can compete against the world in anything, whether it's textiles, steel manufacturing, or whether it's agriculture. So I think we lack 20, 30 years of protectionism. So we as industries can actually ensure that almost 100%, if not 100% of our workforce is Ghanaian, and they have the right skill set and the productivity to compete across the world.
Thank you very much, Eric. I want to go back to Uncle Edward. With the importers, if you look at the Engineering Council Act 819, is a law. It requires that anybody dealing with engineering products will have to be licensed. I don't know if that is part of a compliance requirement from your end to ensure that anybody who is importing steel products, especially for steel rebars, has that completely a check that you do. Not really. For us at customs, we don't register importers. What we do is we register manufacturers. And so if you want to manufacture any product, you need to come to us, we register you. And every year we renew your license for you. And so that also allows you to enjoy the concessionary rates of duty if whatever you are producing is within the category that DRPC has set up for us. Okay, so but we don't register traders. That's right. Oh, okay. All right. So I'll come back to the Ministry of Trade. Minister of Trade. Yes. So Ministry of Trade, how can the collaboration between industry stakeholders and regulatory bodies ensure that imported rebars meet safety, quality, and regulatory standards? Do you have any role to play in here?
Yes, I think should be a collaborative role. As we saw, 50%, about 50% of the rebars are imported, and working with industry. Of course, if industry has a productive capacity, as Mr. Kenny has said, then can use standards. Of course, if a local industry is complying or adhering to the standards, then we can also inform customs that whoever is importing must meet the standards. And the problem we have, of course, if people import and they don't meet the standards, it's very difficult for you to say that it should be export. It's very difficult. They will find ways and means, and it will still on the market. So even before the goods come in, must ensure that they meet the quality standards. Whether the tensile strength, the ductility, the hardness, compressor, the sizes, the length. Because maybe it's 20 feet, but someone makes his or hers, 19 feet, and tells you it's a rebar. So it should be collaborative. I think you also mentioned about having a committee. So in order for us to sort of resolve these issues, we should have an advisory committee that advises and influences policy. You see, so it should influence government policy on the way forward. I think that's what I can say at this stage. A key recommendation is having an advisory committee that advises or influences government policy. And I think that way, collaborating with industry players, Fabric Metal and others, and all stakeholders here, regulatory bodies, I think we can move forward very well.
All right, thank you very much. Ali, do you want to say something? All right. When it comes to the re-exportation of substandard products, it's possible for us. Currently, we are working on diapers that was imported, and Standards Authority went to examine, and they noticed that quality was below standard. And so the consignment was detained at the port. So they are taking the necessary steps to have them re-exported. And so it's possible. You don't release them from the port. So it's not like the importer takes the things away and now you have to go and chase him to make sure he re-export. The items are at the port. And if you don't speed up the process to re-export, you'll be paying storage charges and all that. And so it's very possible. Then the other aspect of inspection, when we're doing pre-shipment inspection, it was easier. You could determine the quality, the quantity, or whatever the description of the items before they are shipped into the country. But now we are doing a destination inspection. And so it's only when the items arrive that we get to see exactly what it is that you have described to us. Because when it comes to description, sometimes they are very big. Even what the thing is different from where you are bringing, you say that it. The pictures are different. It's only when it arrives that we get to know exactly what it is that you have brought. And that is when you can take the necessary action. And so that is the issue. We'll just hope that everybody will have to comply with the standard procedures. And so if we are told that you can't bring certain items, don't bring them. But once you bring them, these are some of the issues that we'll have to deal. Well, thank you very much. This is insightful. Ali, please go on.
Okay, so Ghana Standards Authority has a destination inspectorate department, and steel bars are treated as high-risk goods. So when they come to the port, they are sampled and brought to the lab for testing. So, but the GSA is also trying to implement pre-shipment inspection. In this case, so if steel bars are supposed to come into the country, they will be inspected in their country of manufacture, and then an accredited lab will give a test report. An inspection company outside the country that is also recognized will give a report that these products are good and they are okay to be imported. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have some people online. All right, so we would, in the next few minutes, come to have some questions for them. You can ask them. But before we do that, I have a question here. This is a general question that any of you can answer. Apart from the internal source of raw materials, that's the scrap metal that are framed from, what other raw materials do you get from here?
So in terms of raw materials, the process, there's several additives that we bring. So in our case, our raw material will be scrap or iron ore. But when it goes into the furnace, we keep testing for the material, and we look at 25 different compositions of different chemicals, and we can vary in our furnaces. We can vary the chemical composition. So there are silicon manganese. There's a lot of other additives that get put into the furnaces to ensure that the steel we produce complies with the standards.
All right, thank you. So I'll come back to you, audience, friends here. You can ask questions, you can contribute to it, or ask of everybody's ready. But I'll give my president the chance first. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the exposure that you've given to us this afternoon. Well, when the question of raw materials was asked, said we use a lot of scrap material. Those of us in the road industry, we are facing a huge challenge. We install crash barriers, handrails, manhole covers, and they are pilfered, they are stolen, and they end up with you. Now, when that happens, when you buy stolen goods, one who steals and the one who receives, are they not the same category? So is it fair to state that those of you in the steel manufacturing industry, and I'm not mentioning you per se, but the industry would have to support government in replacing some of these stolen items? And I have a lot of examples. Our road project that we completed recently, in the past 2 years, I went out there just about a month or two ago. The first day when I went, I think 3 of our handrails were gone. And these are very heavy gauge. They are not the types that they sell 3 mm on the market. Very heavy gauge. We even have to import them. And then the next time I went, 2, before I realized 13 were gone. We reported to the police. We installed crash barriers. 40 meters went within a day. And many, many, many examples like that. Manhole covers, I remember the place, we have to do it like 3 or 4 times. What is your contribution to helping to ensure that this does not happen? Because when the items come, and again, I know you have middlemen. I'm sure they are disguised in such a way that you will get to know that this probably came from somewhere other than being scrap. It is not scrap, so far as we are concerned. So that is one. Then the issue about volumes. You know, Edie mentioned that we are producing 120,000, and then you have said that you actually have an installed capacity of 1.2 million tons. But then the usage in Ghana is about 600,000. In terms of the figures, I don't know who will help us, whether from the Ministry of Trade and Industry or Customs, GRA, Customs Division. Yes. What are the figures? I want to have an idea of the figures. How much are we importing? Is it about, because I was just scanning through, and it's talking about 3 billion or 8 billion dollars that we are, sending out of this country. Please, can you? So that's my second. The third one is to GSA. You have said that you have GS 788, and you've listed variety, and you mentioned dimensions. But I go to the market, and you want 12 millimeter squared rebar, and they tell you that they have 10.5, they have 11, then they have standard, they have imported, and all sorts of, then even the dimensions, you mentioned it. You say that mass steel is supposed to be 9 meters and the high tensile 12. They don't meet the dimension. Please, why do we have such a thing on the market? And please, this is a corollary to what I just said. Now, sometimes, especially when you go to timber market and you want to buy steel reinforcement, you have pieces which have been welded. And if you are not very careful, you will not see it. They are very, very good. They'll weld a steel and present it to you as correct length. If you don't perform any bending, and of course, the joint might not coincide with your cut session. You bend, it breaks. And if you install this in your structure and it undergoes bending, your guess is as good as mine. Thank you.
All right, so you have 3 questions.
Thank you.
GSA, TRA, and then Eric. So, okay, let me go through it.
Yeah, when it comes to figures, I am not too sure if that has been generated. It's possible to get the figures, but I didn't know we'll be needing it. And so we'll have to go through the system and try to see what it is that has come in. but imports. Yeah. Yes. Like you indicated, they are only currently doing about 50%. And so it means that the other 50% has to come from foreign. And when he was doing his presentation, he talked about imports and the cost. And so for us in customs, tariff will continue to be a very important source of revenue. And for this year, Customs Division is collecting about 38 billion Ghana cedis, and it's going to come from the tariff. Cumulatively, the entire DRA is doing over 100 billion. And so it's going to come from some of these sources. And so imports will always give us revenue. And that is what we need for national development, unfortunately. So sometimes I feel very uncomfortable when I'm dealing with issues concerning tariff, because it's a very huge component of the cost of doing business. And so once the tariff up, it means that it affects cost of doing business. And usually when you step out there, the story is like, and customs is charging us so much, but it's a policy issue. And so maybe you can take that discussion up the ladder and see how you can get some consensus as to how to go about it without compromising the revenue. Until further notice, the tariff continues to be a source of revenue. And so we can't do anything about it for now. But let's see how we can go around and maybe get our revenue, but not compromise the standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric?
You put me in the hotspot. I think I'm going to take a question instead. The reality is, and I would say that from a company, from a personal perspective, somebody that buys something stolen is as guilty as the person that steals it. So on our way of managing our company, we try to ensure we don't buy any goods. It is a problem. What you said, we've seen it in other countries, particularly in road development. But that has to do a lot to do with training, making sure the stakeholders talk to the companies, they talk about the seriousness of them, they make them aware. But in our particular case, we try not to take risks and liabilities that would mean our company's name being damaged by buying stolen goods. We try not to do that. And to my knowledge, we've never done that before. But it's something that it does happen. We are aware, and I think that the stakeholders need to be talking to the factories to make sure it doesn't happen. Before I pass it on to our friend, and I think that you say, so the critical thing about quality and sizes is that the estimates that we have in Ghana are the correct ones. Ghana Institution of Engineering knows, defines how to train our engineers and how they're supposed to design structures. And then they refer to GS 788, which is the current standard we have in Ghana. It's very clear. It says it very clearly. You should have your name on it, on the manufacturing. You should have the diameter. You should have the tensile. But 80% of the steel being sold in Ghana doesn't have it. So the problem that we have is not clarity on standards or the estimates that we have. The problem that we have is in enforcing conformability of these standards. In this case, and we've seen, we are aware that the institution is trying to review or enact a review of the standards. Unfortunately, ISO standards, which is the base for the standards of GS 788, was made to allow for the standards of every, it's actually international standard organization. So in order not to diminish anybody's participation, they made them very open, which means that GS 788 has 23 different standards. If you multiply by each one of the different diameters, means you've got about 240 permutations. When you go to a distributor of steel, and you're not going to find 240 different types of steel, right? So we believe that the trend that's happening in Africa, and particularly in Central Africa, but Burkina, Senegal, is to ban anything that is not high tensile. And this doesn't mean that mild steel cannot be used. As an engineer, you know that if you use something that is more ductile, can increase the diameter to make up for it, and it will work. The problem is because we don't have the way to control conformity, if we were to reduce to only high tensile, it would make it easier for GSA to do controls, for SEPs to do their controls at the borders, for construction companies, you would know that you wouldn't get anything but a good, strong steel, for distributors to know that where they're supposed to buy it and what's supposed to be. So I think that we all walking along roads together, but there are important changes that need to be done for the steel and the cement sector. If you buy a bad door, if you buy a bad AC, nobody will die. But if you buy or use the wrong steel or the wrong cement, that building will collapse. And in the last 3 months, we've seen, sometimes it doesn't even get to the news, but there's been 5, 6, 7 buildings collapse in Ghana. And unfortunately, this steel, or the majority of the steel, is not even marked. So who's accountable for that? Is it the engineer? Is it the architect? Is it the contractor? Is it the distributor? Is it the steel manufacturer? And how can you do that if the steel is not marked? So I think that the estimates, there's clarity on the standards, they're doing an amazing job, and I want to congratulate. But I think that there's still 2, 3 turns of the wheel that we need to do to ensure. And that will be beneficial for manufacturing companies, because a strong industry is one that has a strong quality, strong controls, a strong involvement with the stakeholders. So we employ in helping the conformity and ensuring that that happens. To go back and answer to the figures, while I could be wrong, I do believe our figures, and we're in the market, they're correct. Ghana consumes about 600,000 tons of steel every year. Interestingly, imported steel is not a threat to us. Imported steel is less than 10%, actually. It's very small. What's wrong with that steel is that we go back to accountability. We have a factory here. If we're doing the wrong thing, it can come, closes down, goes in jail if somebody dies. Let's hope that's not going to happen. I'll be there. But when we import something from abroad and there's no marking, or it's done by a factory 10,000 miles away, when something goes wrong, who's going to take accountability? Oh, me, I just imported. Well, I was not the manufacturer. Oh, me, I was just the contractor. I went and bought it, was a distributor. So the reality is that when we support the local industry, particularly in these important factors like cement or steel, we're not only promoting the local workforce, skill set, development, so Ghana grows very strong, but we're also making accountable the people in the value chain. And that's why we need the help of the Ministry of Trade, of Customs, because to reinforce the local manufacturing, everybody's going to be better off.
Thank you very much, Adley.
I think Eric has answered all the questions that were directed to me. Yeah, to add to what he just said, before coming here, I consulted the one in charge of imports, and he confirms what Eric is saying. Importation is just about 10%. 90% of steel bars produced are produced locally. And when it comes to the size, sizes are supposed to be in millimeters. We use SIU. Like manufacturers are supposed to put sizes on the steel bar. So if it's 12 mm, it's supposed to be on the steel bar, but they are not doing it. In February, GSA invited manufacturers, importers, and retailers, and they were briefed on what they know was on the market, but they were briefed and they were told to go and correct. After that, we went back to do surveillance, that is factory surveillance, a few months ago. And when it comes to dimensions, it has improved a bit. We sampled from about eight factories, and we had 17% failure in diameters. And these diameters are between 8 and 16. Those are the ones that normally used in building. And when it comes to labeling, 63% were not adequately labeled. These are not imported ones, so these are the ones locally made. These are the Ghanaian ones. Some will have maybe their company name on it, but will not have the diameter or the strength on it. And this is a problem. When it comes to the one that you said, you go to the market and they've joined the steel bars, that is not correct. So if you see anything like that, please report. It's not correct. They are not supposed to do it. So, thank you.
Wow. So it means that we all have to watch and, yes, ED will come. So what it means is that as stakeholders, when we go out there to engage in steel products and their deficiencies, please, I'm sure GHI can open the opportunity for people to complain about that, and we can channel it to our friends at Standards Authority. You want to say something?
Yes, and about the standard. GSA allows that anybody can request for a review of the standard. If you think there's a problem with the standard, you write to GSA and then ask for a review. You bring your point, and then a technical committee will organize to deliberate on the issues raised and will be agreed whether to include it or not to include it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, ED.
Yes, I want to, again, to the GSA concerning the wide variety of products you have. Don't you think that that is a problem for you in terms of monitoring the products in the market? And then the second thing is, when you identify those non-conforming products within the local manufacturer, what do you manufacture? What do you do? And then the third thing, those figures came from Joseph. So those
What's that? What's that? What's that?
Okay, so when GSA invited the importers and manufacturers, they were told that we will be enforcing the marking requirements. So
Please, I close the door because there's a disturbance. I'm in a meeting. We are having a discussion at the institution. But it looks like the voices are disturbing.
So
That's why I close the door.
the second time
Because we
around,
were doing it here, and people have come
calling
to
them
invade the
again
place.
to brief them about our
Even as
findings.
I'm here,
Then
the noise is
the
still coming
final
outside.
one.
So I have to close the door to
I'm sure you hear
reduce the noise
this
level.
yes, very soon.
That place there, we don't have a reception, so I'm doing it
You,
here.
but
you,
the penalties, but the materials, the non-conforming
That's why I
products,
closed the
what
door.
happens?
It's not because of you. People have come to you. We were here before you came. We were
but in
having
terms of
this thing. You come to
communication,
invade the
I
place.
mean,
Now we are here to
how does the public get to know that this is what is happening? Because if the public gets to know
But
the
voice no,
steps you
it's
have
slow. I
taken,
can't
I'm
even
sure
hear what
it
the
brings
people
some
are
sort
saying.
of sanity as well into the system. So you should look at that as well. Look at that as well. Yes, any okay.
On the variety. So with the current standard, you are supposed to mark with the grade you are producing to. We have so many varieties. So if you are producing to grade 300, you must make sure that you put it on it so that we confirm. So it's because they are not putting the grade on it. That is what is causing all this. But if they are able to put, if you want to produce with the current standard, if you want to produce 20 grades, it's up to you. But you must make sure that you put it on.
It is better at the open place here than when you are
Is
inside.
that I think for the bulk of the steel bar products
I'm picking a call.
that's correct. And from a structural point of view, it's something that we have to look at so that the variety that he's talking about, you know that if we can develop maybe another part of the standard, just to focus concrete work, it will bring some clarity as to whether when the manufacturer is producing X,
Hello.
Y, or Z, you know that we don't have too many varieties in there. Because what we have in the PS7,
My microphone,
there are so many of them.
for which one?
Some can be used for welding, some can be used for blah blah. But simple when it comes to cook, we don't really need that. And those of us in the city probably don't have technical know-how about using the product. They want to buy iron rods. They don't really care which iron rods it is. But they are specifically something that probably you have to look at when the review is being organized. Yes, Mike.
My question is to this earlier. You see, of late, I drive through town and I see a lot of advertising. All sorts of steel companies seem to have popped up. And a very common phrase now you see is the engineer's choice. It's all over. See, and at times I wonder, is this thing true or not? Oh, I don't want to mention things that yeah, that's what they say. I've seen about 3 or 4 different companies, all with engineers choice. Now, we live in a country where there's a certain myth that everything coming from outside is better than the competitor inside. That's the method. I also know that, for instance, so when I see those things, I wonder whether it's true or not. If you go to the food industry, you do all sorts of advertising, but there's always something on every says that certified by normally when it's fine. And when we have standards board, certain science, Ghana, they have that. Yeah. Do you have something like that for the steel people? So that if we see Fabric Metal making a claim, we look at the corner to see if that advert has been agreed to by the Ghana Standards Authority. But if someone like, if I see it, then I'm comfortable. If I don't, I wonder. Does something like that exist? And if it doesn't, why not?
Okay, there's nothing like that. But they all the steel companies are certified by GSA. We have a certification scheme that they go to their factories yearly, take samples, look at their processes, test the steel bars to see if it conforms, and then certificates are reviewed. So they have licenses. Those ones, I'm sure you get the certificate in their offices, but not on their address.
But why don't you want to inform the public that these kind of companies are certified?
Okay, it's something that is being done with other products. So I'll carry this.
But let me ask a follow-up to your question. As part of their packaging to distributors or whatever, they could have that kind of embossment on maybe the packaging, not on the steel bar, but on the pack. It's like buying some a local medicine in a box, or on the box they have FDA sort of. But also for the steel bars, as part of the package, maybe the bulk that they have, you can have some PSA embossment, or not on the steel bar, but as part of the package. You can look at that. You can look at that. Eric.
So let me explain that. First of all, I've seen this in, it's not us actually, but I've seen as well the ads. The biggest, you started by saying there is a perception that anything from the outside is better than what we do in Ghana. And that's just wrong. The steel that we produce in Ghana is as good as any produced anywhere in the world, if it meets the standard which is being set forth by the estimates in Ghana, which should start by the Ghana Institution of Engineering, supported by standards and conformity checks by GSA and the Ports Authority. The reality is that the reason why there's 10% of the market that still brings steel from the outside is because there's some people that still believe that happens, and they actually pay about possibly 2,000 cities per ton more than for local steel, just because they think it's coming. But it's the same problem that we're facing with engineers, right? How many projects are bringing engineering from abroad when we have good engineers in Ghana? And architects from abroad, because they don't trust that their architects in Ghana will write. And I don't think there's a disbelief that the engineers, the steel, or the architects are wrong. I think that nobody's controlling and nobody's taking accountability. So the reality is that what they don't trust is that the controls are in place. In most of the countries around the world, when you're building a building, they come to you. You don't only get a building certificate. Here, when you get the building certificate, is the last time you see the assembly. Once you have it, nobody comes to check. But in many countries in the world, they will come to your site, they'll pick up samples of concrete or steel, they'll go and test it, you pay for it. They go and test it, and they shut you down if it doesn't comply. So I think that when people issue building certificates, which is the assembly responsibility to go and check that the building is not only how far from the boundary and how tall every floor, but they should be checking actually the quality of the steel, the concrete. When something fails, they should be accountable. They should be going back to assembly and say, you did not do your job. In a similar way that in our case, just so you know, I think GSA is doing a marvelous job. Just need to advance a few more steps together. But in our case, we do certify with GSA. We also do tests with GSA, but we also use a third-party company called Rebars. That means that every single high tensile steel you buy from us is certified by a third party, and it'd be an easy check. 90%, we just said that 90% of the steel in Ghana comes from local manufacturing. There's 7 manufacturers in Ghana. Therefore, GSA can hire 14 people and manage 24 hours a day. Because going once a year is not enough. Every 5 days, we rotate all our steel, which means that coming in 5 days' time, the steel you saw is already been sold. So the reality is that we have an extraordinary lab in our place, and there's no reason why GSA should actually not be able to hire people, post them in our place, ensure that 100% of the steel conforms to the standard. It's not that difficult. Something that you mentioned before, yes, other countries, when they see non-conforming, they scrap it, but that's a scrap it. I mean, I could not know, but I have not known of any non-conforming material being scrapped in Ghana. Burkina Faso, which is a neighboring country, when our factory is there as well, they actually did. The Ministry of Trade went around, went to distributors. Every single non-conforming steel was actually taken away from them, and it was scrapped, straight taken to our furnaces, which we paid, by the way. We paid for scrap. So the reality is that it can be done. I'm not talking about the stringent controls of the UK or the US or Japan. This is happening. In Senegal, there is no single bar unmarked. And in Rwanda and in Angola and in Burkina, there should not be any steel that's not conforming because there's people going around and policing it. So the estimates are there. The standards are very clear. What we're lacking is control, conformity, and accountability. And until we don't get around that, we're not going to get out of this cycle of, oh, everything Ghana is bad, or if it's Ghanaian, it's not as good as somewhere else. What we do have in Ghana in terms of engineers, architects, and products, they're as good here as anywhere in the world, to the very top. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It means that we have a lot of work to do, especially at GSA and our stakeholders. GSA and engineers, Yes, we have a lot of work to do. So please, let's all help the system. If you bought a product and it's not conforming, kindly let us know. I'll come to you. But let me, yes.
Thank you. I think what Jenny is saying is very right. Control is the issue about control. So for instance, the standard should not, okay, so we have quality standards. So there's a standards available. But adherence to standards is key. And I'm sure that consumers, when people are going to buy rebars, they don't ask whether is this imported or locally produced. Okay, so if it's imported, then it's better than locally produced. I'm sure majority of consumers admit that locally produced rebars are of high quality. I think maybe majority of us here, if we should do a survey right now, majority of us say that locally produced rebars are of quality. So the issue here lies with regulation. So how do we ensure that the imported ones also meet technical requirements? So if we are sort of encouraging the local industry or the industry to comply with the standards, then of course those ones which are also imported must comply. If they don't comply, it's, like you said, be exported or used as scrap for the local industry. We must enforce it. It's not enough to say, oh, okay, the standard is there, it's true, but adhere to the standard. The marking should be there, the dimensions, the length, everything that needs to be there according to the standard must be there. And then when we do this, we'll be able to find headway. I think you also said about traceability or tracking. So the buildings that collapsed, can we track that the rods or the rebars used were imported? We cannot tell whether they were imported or locally produced. So we need to track all these things, and I'm sure we will make headway. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Day. Yeah, please, my question to the GSA, Adelaide. Yes, initially when the statistics was 50% produced in Ghana, I was beginning to understand why we have been talking. But now that we know it is 90% produced in Ghana, and you also just confirmed that all, or let's say almost all, of the manufacturers are certified by GSA. It means that the everything is under control or should be under control. Should we then see the GSA as a problem in the sense that we have the 10%, I mean, the 10% that is coming into the country should not account for all the problems we are seeing here. It should be within 90%. And they are renewed regularly, their certificates are renewed. you say that you go there, you check, and if they meet requirements, you renew them. What do we check? Do we check the factory setting only? Maybe they have a fire extinguisher, they have all those other things, and then we renew their certificates, or that we actually check their products as well. But then I'm also, I'm not too sure whether GSA does only, they just do the standards or get it done, and some other entity does the enforcement. Maybe you should educate us now whether enforcement is part of your role. If it is, then maybe that is where we should be looking at solving the problem from GSA, not from the iron rod producers. Okay. You want to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, so I said they are certified by all the steel manufacturing companies are certified by us. Yes, we go through their process and we certify the products. We do test the product. The problem here is that the retailers come to them. I want this size, and then they manufacture for them. They don't label it. I'm sure Eric will attest to this. When we come and take the samples, we get the correct size. They produce 16 correctly, they produce 12 correctly. That is what we get. They are within the ranges. But when you go to the market, you go and ask, you say you are buying 16, then you get 14.3, you get 14.5. So it's the retailers or demand that makes them produce such sizes. But yes, regulators are supposed to ensure that such things are not at the retailing shops. So at the moment, there's no regulator for steel bars. So GSA is supposed to do that job. And we have started. I would say we have not been doing very well. So we have started. You will see improvement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, please, yes, when you want to make a comment, we want to know you, so you mention your name, where you are coming from, so that we can know you. Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Yes. My name is Al-Amin Al-Hassan, Director, Ghana Railway Development Authority. Listening to your earlier question about the circular economy, I think I began to formulate my own circular economy when the President mentioned theft and vandalism of installed infrastructure. I was thinking, is that the one where government spends money to install a piece of infrastructure, a miscreant goes to steal it, sells it to a middleman, who sells it to steel manufacturing company, that forms the steel or the rebars, and engineer goes back to buy it. So they're in a circle. I'm sorry, I'm speaking from the railway's perspective.
Yeah.
Significant amount of our rail has been stolen, and it goes nowhere down to the steel manufacturing companies. When we talk of controls by standards authority, are we also looking at enforcement, where potentially we'll have not just officers from standards authority, but the police at the same company, so that we don't test only what has been produced, but what has come in there, so that we know where the sources of the material come from. We are not just talking of our existing narrow gauge infrastructure or the rail steel that solid, but then the newly installed railway line that we have from Tema to Mpakadan, we have each place being removed even before the trains come on it. There are installations that we have done, and within days, they've been taken out. So this is serious. Government cannot pump $480 million into an infrastructure that will not be able to be used because people have stolen it. And nobody is questioning the source of the material when they get to the steel mills. And that is unfortunate. We need to look at it. Thank you.
Wow. So these are issues, and they're all part of the so-called circular economy issues. So we all have to help ourselves. I was telling Adley that's flashed somewhere in our standard, the GS 788. There's somewhere that specified a kind of scraps the manufacturers will have to use. Am I correct?
Yes.
So potentially means that there are some of the scraps you send to the manufacturer, they don't have to buy it. I think in some way the GS7 is in there, yes. So let's help ourselves as stakeholders, okay, and ensure that we have sanity in the system. I think also that the end user, and then they all need to educate the end user. How would the end user know that this is imported or even locally made? I don't think they even know. It's a question to ask ourselves. See, so we have yes, please your name and then where you're coming from.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Yeboah. I'm a retailer for Rebars.
Wow.
And the first thing I want to talk about is what engineer was complaining about. I have a setup with modern machines for cutting and bending. So when you buy from us, we can either supply straight rods or cut and bend ready to use rods. So we are doing that. We are at Adenta. Sylvia. Mikado rebar and concrete. Okay, so Engineer Adley, when I place my order at the factory and I say I want 12 mm, I don't tell them the size of how the 12 mm should be made for me. But what they bring to me, sometimes I know that is not 12 mm, but that is what they bring me. So what Eric is saying that you should have representatives at the factories so that daily production is checked. So that when I place my order, what comes is what it should be. Okay, and then listening to all the discussions that's going on, clearly the source of raw material is not sustainable because if their capacity is 1.2 million and at the moment they are producing 600,000 and we are losing rails, then if they are producing 1.2 million, our routes will go and everything will go. So we should really look at the source of the raw material. Thank you.
But Sylvia, I want to ask a quick question. If they brought you the steel bar, and from what you are just said, that 16 mm, you knew that it did not necessarily be steel, how do you confront the situation? Do you sell it or you get back to the manufacturer? Because you have to help the system.
Okay, so in the mine steel, we have ordinary and standard.
Wow. Wow. And is it in our standards? No. Eric, I'll come to you.
In general, if there's no diameter on it, it's not what you believe it is. Assume that almost 100% of the time. If there's no diameter on it, means it's actually not what you think it is. It's also not what your customer think it is. Yes. So at the end of the day, we are where we are, and it's not about blaming anybody. There's a whole value chain. What we need to realize, all of us, is that there has to be a transformational change at all levels. At manufacturing, at importation, at distributors, at retailers, at the construction companies that they buy the materials. We need to be aware of what they're buying, and even all the way up to the people who are selling apartments and houses. They should also be accountable for selling a good structure, right? So it's not about blaming. There's faults that we have inherited throughout the whole value chain. What is our job today that we hear, the ones that we hear, Ghana Institution of Engineering, GSA, Customs, the manufacturers, is to say, stop this. The past is past, it's gone, there's nothing we can do. We're not going to go and take down all the bad structures built with bad cement, bad steel, or bad processes. But it is our responsibility as people today to stop this once and for all. There's no need for it. There is no need. One thing that had not been spoken today, which is how economical is steel. Steel in Ghana is actually cheaper than any neighboring country. It's cheaper. And you need to understand that in this building, only 10% of the contents value of building this steel. So if we were all going from proper steel, means high tensile, we would add 20% to the cost of steel today. 20% on this building, where only 10% is actually steel, is 2% on the building. Now, nobody's going to stop building houses or apartments or offices or factories for 2% of the overall cost. It's not going to stop anybody. People should not be saying, oh, if we increase 20% of steel. No, that's the equivalent of increasing 2% of the buildings to give certainty that we are giving a legacy to generations. Because when some of us travel and we go to some other cities and we see some streets with buildings that have been there for 500 years. And yes, it's true, a building should not live only 30, 50 years. Technically, I'm sure the chemical engineers will say that concrete starts actually after 100 years. It's true, but it degrades very little over a long, long period of time. What we have to do is not build a house 4 times. Build it once so your sons, grandsons, your great-grandsons can enjoy that building. And we've done it once. In general, building wrong costs a lot more money than building right. And that's for 2%. So I think that what all the estimates that we have to do is, let's not look back and put blame on people, but let's stop continuing doing it. We know about it. It's out. We're all smart. We all know what's happening. How do we all get together? How do we, maybe we need an advisory group to get all the estimates together? Let's stop. And the quicker we stop, the better for Ghana.
Yeah, but still Sylvia, I needed a little education. What's the meaning of the standard and how to, is it standard and what? Ordinary. It's very important, how do we get to know that?
Okay, so on the market, if you say you want mild steel, it's either you
no, go on.
The wrong way.
No, we really want to understand so that when we are shaping policy or proposing for a review of the standard, we know what.
Okay. So if you want standard, then you get the proper 16 mm that you want. It's not all the retailers who sell those ones. If you want ordinary, then you get the ones in the system that we are discussing. So yes, 14 for 16, and then 11.5 for 12, and 8 mm for 10 mm.
Wow. But yes, but seriously speaking, these things have engineering implications. You see, one, if the client doesn't know, and let's say a mason went in to buy the stuff, he's buying at the same price, but meanwhile he's cheating the client.
No, the price is not the same.
No, I'm coming. The design says buy 16 mm. Okay, he goes and says he wants standard, ordinary, right? And that is 40 mm. The price differential isn't there, right? But he tells the client it's 16 mm. So he's cheating the client. There was a case in Koforidua like that. They believe that the guy was a church, and the church gave him the money to put a church. The assembly got alarmed. When we went, 60 mm is 40 mm. Meanwhile, the client asked for 60 mm. So we have a lot of issues on that we need to address. We need to stop this. And let's understand that engineering products are technical products. The designer has designed that this is the specification. If you are not getting the specification and you use it and there's a collapse, that means that you start going back and track where the fault is coming from. When we see that you are the one who sold the thing, it means that you'll be held responsible or liable. All right, I want to say something. Okay.
So
I'll come.
So my small advice, as GSA is starting to do the right thing or trying to enforce, contractors or consumers are also supposed to do something small. When you receive consignment, please take samples, bring to GSA to confirm the strength and the sizes. To be very helpful.
Okay, GSA want to control. Okay, then I'll come to my friend from IET. Okay, please mention your name and then.
My name is Rachel. Most of my questions have been answered, but then I have this thing. It's similar to what Sylvia said. My uncle went out to one of the companies, actually knowing where I work. So, oh yes, that company is certified by us. And he bought them.
Is it a manufacturer or?
Manufacturer.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that on the invoice, it is written somewhere that 16 mm is actually, let's say, 14 mm. Yes. he showed the invoice to me and said, this is the company you said is certified. So it is not really about only distributors making those demands, but the manufacturers themselves. The interesting thing is that, like what my colleague engineer Adley said, when we come there and then they know we are coming there, they will do the right thing. But then, yes, then when we come out, then what is on the market is different. Now, we are talking about accountability. Must any policeman come and stand in the manufacturer's office to say that I'm making sure you are doing the right thing?
All right.
I think that the accountability should begin from us. We shouldn't wait for somebody, an enforcement body, to come and hey, do the right thing. We know it. Why should I write on the invoice that a 16 mm is equal to a 14 mm nominal diameter? And that company is certified by us. I was so, actually, we are working and it's come up. So, like my colleague said, it's come up and on our table, and soon that company will be called. But I was so disappointed and humiliated because I gave an endorsement and it was the opposite.
Okay, so IET, you're welcome. IET, or you have a big voice.
Thank you very much. My name is Michael Bija. Please, as Madam was saying, do a lot of structural integrity. About 90–80% of the rod that they use. The one who is using the rod is confident that is 16 mm. But if you use your caliper to check it, it's 14. So that means the problem is not from the one who is buying or the one who is selling. It's from the one who is manufacturing the rod. So if they can take some of the size out, like 14 and 8, if they can take those size out of the system, so that if they are manufacturing 16, everybody knows that you have 16. But if the person is going to buy 16 and they give him 14, as for him, you have a confidence that he's buying 14, but not want to take one. So,
yes. Oh, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. You know, I mean, these are some of the, in fact, he will attest that these are some of the issues which we have been formulated as part of the review. But we don't need that series of 222 mm differences. You will not see them. I'll come. Oh, you want to say something quickly?
They have personnel at the factories 24/7.
So Ali will answer that. Ali, note it. You answer that. Yesterday, a friend of mine went to buy just salad. A friend of mine went to buy just salad, and we had a GRA person there who was right there. No, now GRA has posted people, staff all over them, even restaurants. After writing, I say, GRA, I'm not going to throw invoice salad. Maybe I think this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
You are coming.
From what
you are
has been said, I think when it comes to certification, what you can do is you do unannounced visits. You see, so having personnel of GSA present at the
factories,
the number of factories, almost 24/7 is going to be tough.
Okay.
Well, they can try it. It can be tried, but I'm saying that can have certification because something unannounced visits. Yes. So you can visit the factory without telling them that you are coming. Then you come, you check the dimensions, the diameters, the sizes, even the length. So I think GSA can take this up. They can do this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, just hold on for me. Small. Joe, come.
Originality.
Please, the mic, is it working? Hey, we have some messages in the chat box, right? Okay, we'll go back. We have 43 participants online.
Yes, originality. I want to speak about the enforcement.
Okay.
One of the ways to do the enforcement, not only in the factories, but on the products that are out. If we are able to emboss on every product, or we enforce that each company has its name the size, and then the strength on the product. Once it is out, it is out. If we check from outside and we measure, okay, this diameter is written 10 millimeter, but it is 8 millimeter, and then the embossed name of the company is on it, then that company is indicted by its own product. We don't need to go maybe man the company 24 hours a day, but the product that it has churned out and its name is on it, like its signature, then we check on that. If we check and it's not okay, then the company is liable to that. That is one of the ways we can really enforce to have the correct thing done.
You see,
So I wanted to add.
okay, go on. Then Eric, you come in and
I think the marking requirements is very important. That is why it's a standard. Because if a company would put his or its name on its product, it will ensure that for the product that is churning out is of quality. So that is first party attestation. I'm attesting that this product that I'm churning out is of the highest quality. So by putting their name on the item, they are attesting that their product is of high quality. But if we don't enforce the marking requirements as stipulated in the standard, then they produce it, their name is not on the rebar, and they know that it will enter the market and somebody will buy it. And you cannot trace or track it to them. But if we enforce the marking requirements, which is stipulated in the standard, then before they even churn out or produce that product and their name is on it, you will ensure that this product is of high quality. And I think we need to do that. We need to enforce. I think the issue is about enforcing the standard. If you do that, I'm sure we'll solve most of these problems.
Yes, but see, these things in terms of strict regime really occurs when, should I call it, big projects, maybe government projects where contracts are required to be. But those of us putting out 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, that is where the issue is. And you have Macy's doing the purchasing for you. That is where the issue is. So that's why if you look at the presentation given by Engineer Nyante, now the law at 819 requires that anybody doing in something related to engineering, you have to be licensed. That's why we are working hard to bring on board the craftsmen, the masons, the cabineters, so that we can promote this education. Because I tell you, those guys down there, they're a big resource that if you're able to get them with their with good information, they can help us a lot. Because they can say, what Eric, do you understand?
Sorry?
Do you understand what I said?
No, I didn't.
Okay, go on.
You must have been talking about me. I'm just kidding. I
Please
think I'll go back several steps. The first one, it's very difficult with the caliper to see the reality thickness. One, because the rebar is actually not round, it's oval. Two, it has ribs. So I'll be frank, even with a caliper, it would be very difficult. The only way to do that is to measure 1 meter, take the weight, and with the density of steel, you know actually the average diameter. But it's not common for people to go around calipers when you're buying steel. So the reality, what the gentleman said is correct, and what GSA standard 788 is there, which is all rebars should be marked. And all imported rebars should be marked and should be traceable. And once you have that, you check accountability of the distribution. Unfortunately, it's true, the estimates are not there to control factories, but they're supposed to check the transaction between the consumer and the seller of that. That's normally, it happens with milk, food, anything. So the reality is that if all the bars had the name of the factory, the diameter, and the tensile, you could actually test, because GSA does tests, but when the bar is not, doesn't have the label on it, if it's not 16, it's going to be 14, because the standard allows both, it's one or the other. So we pass it. And if it's not 500 tensile, it's 300 tensile, but because the standard allows 300, 400, 500, it meets one of them. So that bar actually is misunderstood at an approved bar. So what we're trying to say as well is that we know we need to have less standards. Not you as engineers, you can actually engineer a building with 300, 400, 500. It all depends on your mix of the concrete strength, the thickness of your steel bars, and the loads that you're trying to support. But the reality is that the majority of the construction industry is improving a lot, but there's still a lot of uneducated people in terms of strength of steel, for example, or the quality or manufacturing. And therefore, we cannot expect all masons or all builders to know about all these things. And to avoid those mistakes, if we limit the amount of standards, we're going to limit the mistakes at the distributor, at the manufacturer, at the construction company. And therefore, it's about limiting chances. I'm going to try to make a parallelism. If I take my kid and I tell him, you write vowels in blue and you write R and S in black, and I give him 5 colors, he might make a mistake after doing a full letter. But if I tell him, here's your blue pen, and you write your letter in blue, I know he's not going to write it in any other color, right? So this is what we're trying to do. And the trend all over Africa, not talking Europe and other places, is this. The majority of countries in Africa are moving from open standards to a single standard, so we avoid those bad choices and mistakes.
Thank you. Rifo, do you have some messages in the chat box? Mention a few of us, a few of them to us. You have Mike, please give them the microphone. Give it to Rifo. But you see, another thing is that before the end user uses the product, the testing regime is very, very important. And the testing regime also has its own protocols. Once we stick to these protocols, you will see the deficiencies. It's not even measuring calipers because the standards requires for tolerances and things like that. So it's a protocol, you have to weigh it, you get a learn, and we require that the material that is used for the product has a particular density. And that is the key thing. Once you know the density, you are able to get the size within the tolerance range. For me, if it's not within that, it means that it's not conforming. Okay, so Sylvia, you have a lot of work to do for us. You need to test some of these products. We need to test them. When they come, take samples. If they are not passing, tell them that they are not passing. No, it's true. And use your platform to educate the community for us. Who ask that you do that. I mean, you are an engineer, so it's a good opportunity for you to educate that space. Anybody coming to buy your product, she presents some technical data sheet. You tell them this is that, so use it for and conform. This is what is going to happen. Then we are still evangelizing the message to our friends. Are you ready? Or any person? Yes, my friend. And why? What's the name? We can hear you. Please go on.
My name is I think that listening to everybody, one of the key things that I think the problem is about moral and poverty. Like our sisters, if you have received laws which are not up to standard, what is the moral part of the right thing to do? Return it to court to the appropriate authority. If you're a mason, you're a contractor, and you have a project, the ultimate aim is to make maximize profit. So the question is, how do I get a meat in terms of price when you go to the market and buy the meat of the products, which has to make to maximize your profit. And so if we look at all this, it's about moral. The fact that everybody, one way or the other, wants to maximize profit. And so if in this country where if you do the right thing, there is no kind of incentive for doing the right thing. If, for instance, I am rejecting the unstandardized bars, and there are no incentives for me, and then my other competitor who is all selling them and is also making a lot of money, what am I supposed to do? I also want to conform, I also want to do the same. So if there are incentives in terms of enforcement, everything we are talking about is enforcement. How do we enforce? Each one of us here is a police in our own small way. If, for instance, I'm a building contractor, or you are a supervisor, you are an engineer, you are a client, and all these things are happening, you are a police in that same small, your small corner. And so if there is an incentive for those who do the right thing, if, for instance, I should pick up a bag which is not properly marked, and I bring it to standard authority, what is the incentive for me? Okay, not to say give me money, but there should be certain things that will make, if I am a retailer, there should be certain packages that should go in my favor. If I'm a manufacturer and I identify my fellow manufacturer doing something wrong, and I come and tell you, what do you do about it? You go turn around like, excuse me, say some of our people in the police. So many police.
Are you the bar?
So I bless this man, and they go back and took you. Those kind of things, it's our moral.
Yeah, yeah.
Put them as a nation, not just in Ghana, but in Africa. That is the problem we need to fight. It's about mindset, it's about morality, it's about poverty, how to maximize profit. And also because we see those at the top lavishing in all that we want to be in the best of things. We want to also be the best and maximize profit.
Thank you very much. So, I'll come to you. I'm beginning to ask myself, Edie. Okay, do you have some more? Okay, get me some questions.
This question is from Engineer Adi, directed to GSA. How often do you certify the labs? Do you have a database of all Rebars testing labs? How do you ensure that these labs are continually certified and on time?
Labs. We do not certify testing labs. We certify products.
Another question?
This one is from Engineer Anieje. Are the local steel manufacturers' labs certified and regularly audited to ensure their adequacy, efficiency, and that they turn out consistent test results? Manufacturers' lab.
Eric?
I think the question was for GSA, but our labs are basically not only we have the technical people with the certificates that they know what they're doing. All the machines get once a year or 6 months, depending on the machine, is being certified. But the question that was raised before and this one, they're connected, which is any lab issuing certificates in Ghana should be certified by GSA. GSA should have a control the same way that Ministry of Health certifies labs that give you blood results. GSA should be responsible for certifying and ensuring the machines have been checked, calibrated, and certified, and the people using them have the technical capacity for that.
Okay, Eddie, yeah, beautiful. It's finished. Now, you want to say something? Can you please? Okay, all right, go ahead.
I want to believe the retailers, the request for standard and ordinary iron rods, because
Sylvia can answer that.
Okay, the prices are different. So if you pay for standard and they bring you ordinary and you accept, then like my brother was saying, the moral, I don't know, but I can't accept something for what I did not pay for.
But the purchase in tons. So the 16 millimeter correct size, the tonnage will be less than 100. But for the other one, they get more.
So one of the important things is engineers, steel benders, and construction people look at the linear meters. You've got a certain definition, and you need X amount of linear meters to do your rings, to do your post. But manufacturers and distributors in general will look at it in tons. So there is a mismatch in there. If you use a lower diameter for the same tonnage, you will get a longer length. And to say a word in favor of the distributors, which are very important, we're not giving them the choice to do the right thing and the moral thing. Because if you're a contractor and you allow another contractor to do the wrong thing, you will never win the contract because he will be cheaper than you. And if you have a distributor, then next door has got another distributor doing the wrong thing, and she tries to do the right thing, she will not sell, she can close down the shop. And similar trickles down all the way to manufacturers. So the reality, unfortunately, and it's not in Africa, it's not in Ghana. If you allow people the flexibility to do the wrong thing, some of them will do the wrong thing. And what needs to be strengthened in Ghana to make an important and strong nation is make sure that the checks, controls, conformity, and accountability are put in place. That's what's missing. There's extraordinary architects, extraordinary manufacturers, extraordinary engineers who just left the door open for them to do anything they want. And some bad apples are spoiling the whole country. The estimates need to put the controls. Any country in the world, it doesn't matter. It's not about Africa. You go to the States, you go to the UK. If you don't do controls, they'll do the same thing. It's human behavior. It's nothing to do with which country it is.
And that is where the lapses are. So if I am an officer who is supposed to check in terms of control, and I compromise with the standard, I've compromised with my everything. So the laws, the institutions, everything we are talking about is human beings who are supposed to enforce.
So no, they're not human beings. That's institutions. You said it. So what we need to strengthen is the institutions' capacity to enforce. When GRA wants to close a shop, they come with the police, and they close the shop. So if you want GSA to be able to do their job, human patrol, send them to the street. Every single bar that is not marked, let him confiscate it. But as long as the also Ministry of Trade is not talking to the Ministry of Interior and saying, this is a serious matter, and we please deploy some patrols to help them enforce it, it's not going to happen. And it's not because of lack of will of GSA or lack of will of good distributors or lack of will of good contractors. You can just not compete in this market if you do the right thing. So we need to enforce that the estimates force everybody to do the right thing.
All right. Well, okay, we have to, I'm trying to have a formulation in my mind. I hope there's a law that says that you don't sell alcohol to anybody below 18. Is that correct? Should anybody go out there, still product, to buy still product? No, that is a question I don't know if it goes with the law. Because if somebody who doesn't have any technical know, we are all trying to ensure that we have some of compliance. So if you are asked a person who is not technically sound, still, should he just go and buy still products? No. You can do that. Can we get Mike? Can we get the microphone for me? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So engineer was saying that sometimes he does structural integrity and the owner is convinced that he used 16 mm. And you are also saying that the steel vendor will take the money, go and buy 14 mm for 6. They don't know it.
Yeah.
All these things I'm saying them because I have an engineering background.
Yeah.
I have had the opportunity to do some engineering projects that required that used the standard. That is how come I know the difference between the ordinary, but there are retailers who don't know it. Sometimes I want to compare prices, so I'll call a retailer and I want to check the price, and I'm insisting that your standard, what is the price? And he doesn't know their standard. They don't know it. So it has to come from somewhere before it gets to the market, because the people using it don't know that they're using the wrong thing. So when you say you want 16 mm, what is given to you? You are convinced that you have got 16 mm. Thank you.
Wow. So we really have issues on our hands. That's why I asked the question. You don't sell alcohol to somebody who is less than 18 years old. Do we allow anybody to just buy product? Engineer Marco, you come in, then Engineer Marco come.
So
you have some. So please go on.
So it's just simple. No embossment, no production. No embossment, no selling. If you meet the one which is not embossed on the market, we scrap it. So all will be under embossment. And it's solved.
But man, the guy.
Yes.
Okay. So you see, the reason why if you don't want,
don't police them. If you don't check at the factory, how will they emboss? So produce how you scrap it, but how do you track it?
But Edie, the question, that's why I see from where Sylvia was coming from. If people who are buying know that when I'm buying a steel bar, I need to look at
why do you transfer that responsibility to the people buy? You should check it at the factory gate. So that by the time it gets out, you are having conform.
Yes, you have to employ more people.
Not to go and do those activities in the market. No, they are wasting time, wasting resources, wasting energy, everything. it isn't expensive to put how many producers do you have? How many manufacturers do you have? And GSA cannot put people at the factories too. And then the supervisors at GSA will go and check on their people there and audit them and ensure that what comes out is accurate.
Okay, so before we, Indian Marco, please. The contractors, you have not spoken. No, Indian Marco is here.
Yeah, I want to answer your question.
Which one?
The
alcohol
18
okay.
years. Right?
Okay.
Standards are supposed to remove the old adage of buyer beware. You know, that's what standards are supposed to do. So if it's right in the factory and it comes, anybody at all should be able to buy. So it's not a question of, you know, limiting people. Then we are going back to buyer beware. So that is the situation. And let me add, I think it's Genesis 11 or whatever. The Tower of Babel, yes. We are not told that it was heavy reinforcement, isn't it? So that's why it collapsed. And according to the same Bible, they were building in an erratic manner. So which means that there was no project management, nothing. Maybe I'm sounding blasphemous, but you bring it back our current situation. Then we will probably need the Hammurabi style of action, where the punishment, you see, in any situation that you don't have punishment, but you have this kind of soft approach to issues. I stopped doing inspection somewhere, let's say 13 or 15 years ago, factory inspection, and this problem was there. Right? So it's not a new problem, it's an old problem, and I would say it's as it is. The problem are from the factories. You know, because how can we have 10 small or we have half-inch small and half-inch big? Where did they come from? It's a language the manufacturers have been using. And it has gone well with the distributors or the suppliers. That's all. So that's how we have to look at the situation. You solve it in the factory and solve it on the market. So if every bar, as my colleagues have already said, if every single bar is marked with your logo, and then they don't, who will do the reverse? So that is it. It's not a situation. We are not in a, you know, a complex situation. It's a simple matter.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, Marco was with GSA. He's on pension now, so I'm sure he knew what he was talking about. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Hassan again. Just to pick on two more things. Okay. One, we're talking rebuy. There is this thing called offcuts. How did they end up in the market or in our building projects? How? They are offcuts and they are there. You see them on construction site being used by our local people. And they think they are cheaper, so they prefer to go to your mills and go and get them. Yes, offcuts. And the second thing is the issues of manufacturing and ethics. I know engineering profession has got this thing called the ethical responsibility of the engineer. So they try to practice it depending on the level of professionalism that they do have. Is there a way to inculcate this in your industry as well, to make sure that whoever it is that works for you is ethically informed, so that the thing will trickle down through the chain itself to where we have the retailers? Thank you.
So to address your first,
go on.
To address your first question, offcuts is not so we don't sell offcuts to distributors, and normally use our own offcuts for our own construction works, or to help workers if they don't want to build things themselves. To tell you the offcut, there's nothing wrong. What's wrong with the offcut, of course, doing green beams, is that it might not reach around, so it might not be useful. But doesn't mean that an offcut has lost its properties in terms of steel, strength, and the diameter. So you could, to use offcuts, normally it doesn't come from factories so much, probably comes away from construction companies. We try to buy them off from our clients, so because we can melt them and use them as raw material. But the fact that it's NOFCA doesn't mean the properties of steel are not there or have changed, but it's not very efficient. And we actually don't sell distributors, so it doesn't go through the chain. But if some do, there's nothing wrong in terms of the quality in that terms. The other second question, which is, yeah, there's a lot of communication that needs to get done from all customers. And I think that I want to laud the Ghana Institution of Engineering. They're doing a great job trying to do all these forums, trying to inform everybody. GSA needs to do their part, companies do their part, construction companies as well. And all this enforcement is to come along with communication. The more we educate everybody, the public, the users, the better. Obviously, I mean, there's a limitation on budgets, on communication, of what we can do, but it's certainly necessary and will be good.
All right. As a last, we want to draw down the case, so I'll give you the last opportunity to share your views with us.
Yeah, so far we've been talking about the physical properties, the diameter, the length and stuff. But what we have not talked about the chemical compositions. What makes it the iron rod that the steel that we think it is. If we are seeing deficiency in terms of the physical, then we may as well maybe try to guess what happened in the metal, in the composition itself. And this brings attention to what the guys online were asking, the laboratories. Of course, you said they are not within your remit, but it's very important that when people test, the result that comes up has some parameters so that people can, others who check can also verify. For now, I may not be able to say something specific about steel, but for concrete, I have seen a report, for instance, that doesn't have, it just gives you the standard size of the mold and gives you unit weight of the material and then tells you the strength, that's all. So when they weighed it, how much they did weigh is not reported, as whether they actually measured it, because all the tests that come from the lab are 150, 150, as whether they really measured it, I don't know. So there should be a kind of regime so that whatever you report on the face of the paper can be verified by someone else who is checking away from the lab.
All right, thank you very much. I think that today has been very interesting. I have been educated by Customs, Moti, my young friend, Engineer, and Eric from the business side of you, and Ali, as well, in the UN party. And I'm sure the comment from all of you have been very, I'm sure we benefited. Who hasn't gained any knowledge? Tell me. Who hasn't gained any knowledge? Do you have a question? Who was that?
Gentleman's last question wasn't answered.
Ah,
yeah.
Is it a comment or a question? A comment. Yes. Okay. I think this was more interested in the results being displayed on
the chemical composition. That test is also done, and most of the time, still bars meet the chemical composition requirement and the tensile property does meet.
All right. So we'll continue to discuss these things, and then we'll converge some point so that we can make sure that the system is sanitized. Before we discharge you have done, let's give them a clap. We want to also sort of thank you very much for coming. Engineer President, please help me. I want to do a presentation first to Abby.
Well, I'm just going to read one so you get to know what's in there. So, well, it says consultants meet, and this is the second edition. Dialogue on challenges and opportunities in the steel rebars sector. As an expression of gratitude and appreciation for being a panel member, Consultants Meet second edition, organized by the Ghana Institution of Engineering, held at
GHI Engineering Center on 31st August 2023. And so now I can, on behalf of the
GSA. Thank you very much for representing GSA. All right, so we call on Uncle Edward. Thank you very much, Uncle Edward, for coming. We appreciate your time. All right. Thank you very much, Engineer President. David, please come. David will help us do the rest. Thank you very much. Let's give my president. Cross. Moti, please come. Thank you very much. And then our young friend, please come. Yeah, you can come sit down. Come sit down. Eric, you do it for us. You do it for us from Fabric Metal. So to Michael Jackson. Very much. We are concluding, but we'll just ask Engineer President just to say a few words. Then from there, David Nyante will make one or two comments. Then we'll ask the chair for Civil Technical Division to give us a closing remark. Then somebody will volunteer for us, right? Well, I think that we've spent a lot of time here already, and you would all agree with me that this has been a very useful and very impactful meeting and dialogue. So all look at the kind of discussions that we've had this evening, and we've been sitting here for probably more than 3 hours, and we've all stayed. We haven't gone out. I think it is very, it is important that we show appreciation to the civil division of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, to the executive director. I know they've been working very hard on this. We traveled to Bolga, and I know throughout the night we were trying to put these presentations together with Ode and so. So let's give them a round of applause. To Fabric Metal is doing a yeoman's job, and I know they are going to survive because they want to do a good thing, but they want to carry the others along with them. Because if you are the only one, and you probably would end up in a ditch, because your competitors would go around the corner and make more money than you, and eventually you will not be able to survive. But then you are relentless, and you have partnered the Ghana Institution of Engineering, and I can assure you that we are also not going to relent. We are going to go with you very far and shape policy, because that is what we are built to do. We shape policy, we have to advocate and ensure that, like the Ali Bongo is saying, we are going to make some noise. We are going to make some noise. So on my own behalf and on behalf of the Council of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, I want to thank all of you, especially those from customs. Sometimes you wonder what was customs talk about when we come for such a supposedly technical dialogue, but they are brought in that aspect which is very important. From Moti, we thank you. As for GSA, we are with you, and you have a lot on your plate. And just like what ED has been advocating, there are many engineers on the out there who are looking for jobs. Please send them to all these steel companies, and then they'll get the jobs done for us. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Do you have anything from the secretarial perspective? Any action plan for us?
Thank you very much. And it's been a fantastic conversation. And we cannot just end this conversation now or here. And we have to move along with this. As I said, we are the only people who can make a change to this industry. And if we don't do it, no one is going to do it for us. So I think we should carry this forward. As we propose an advisory group, we'll be sending letters to the organizations to nominate people to serve on this advisory group. It is only through collaboration that we can begin to make the change that is required in this industry, so that this advisory can continue to discuss the issues that have come up and see how we can resolve them. If you haven't registered, please register. We're getting back to you on all the discussion issues that have gone on here, and then we'll be getting information also back from you. So thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everybody.
Thank you very much, Executive Director. We'll call on the Chair for the Civil Technical Division to give us a closing remark. Engineer Michael Binkuledi. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank everybody who's here. What I'm going to do is just sum up everything that has occurred. Normally, when I come to these things, I don't pay attention. But today, yeah, I paid. I even took notes. Serious matter. I think everything should be summed up by what what's his name, the managing director, Eric said. It has to do with just control, conformity, and accountability. That's all that we're talking about here. And everybody should please take this one. Control, conformity, and accountability. Once you understand it, we're on the way home. And also the issue about the Ghana Standards Authority, they are part of the control and conformity. Please, we are begging you at the factory gates. It can happen, make it happen for us. Fine. And then it's been very obvious that stakeholder participation is critical in this matter. Every practitioner who is involved should be trained, capacity should be built, especially our base, our artisans, our technicians. We have to get them to understand, and a lot of work will be done. Fine. What else do I have to say? I'm done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Civil Chair. Before we go, just one quick announcement. Next week, Thursday, here, we're going to have a meeting with GRA. It's going to be a stakeholder or a forum like this. We're inviting all of you to come. We want to know all on tax audits.